Hello, everyone. How are you? And welcome to another episode of How to Draw a City. Today, we will be doing a 10 or 15 minute deep dive into marketplaces. And by that, I mean we're going to take a look at where you should consider adding them to your towns and cities, the things you should be thinking about, and when it comes time to drawing them, how you capture temporary locations such as tents, look at number 6 right in the middle of the screen here, or more permanent shops. How do you invoke the feel of a shop versus a regular building? And I think you can see from location number 5 here, we have a couple of examples for how you can actually do that. This map we're looking at here, by the way, this is Rikadon for Zagora Games. We completed this about 18 months ago, and we're going to reference it occasionally as we're talking here. So, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Let's talk about what inspired me to place this particular marketplace where I have it. Well, things I feel are contributing factors to the establishment of a market-like environment in your town or city would be that there has to be some kind of thoroughfare, right? Not only of people, but also goods. I think one of the considerations is it's fine to have a little market off the beaten path, off to one side. Perhaps you have a location in your city where it's actually very difficult to build, maybe right here on this hill, for example. But are any goods coming past here? Are any merchants coming past here? Is it easy for them to get their goods to this location? And likewise, what about people? How easy is it for the people to get here? I think your main marketplace should be on a thoroughfare, and here we have it as one of our major streets coming through town, and it also happens to be, I made sure we had a little plaza area here to accommodate, of course, but you'll notice that it's quite close to the docks. So while it's not literally on the water's edge, and I don't think it has to be, it's easy for our merchants to bring their goods from down here and bring them up the road here into the marketplace itself. Likewise, very easy for merchants or people to come down these streets here. We have this nexus-like feeling, and I feel that's one of the most important qualities to a, let's call it a permanent merchant-like location, is that meeting of traffic and goods. Now, obviously, if I had this town drawn and there was a massive building here, then that just would not be the case. It would be located somewhere else. But for this purposes, I actually felt that this feels like a town centre. It feels like we could have a little plaza here, and if there's a plaza here, just without a doubt, we would have some merchants setting up shop. Now, there's another consideration, and that is, and for this purpose, I'm actually going to bring up a different map by the same company, Zagora Games. And with this particular one that you can see to one side here, I have a smaller sort of merchant area set away from the main merchant area over here. You can see again, I have this concept of the docks. We've got a road coming through. We have pretty main roads coming all the way through here, and huddled around this big huge statue we have the main marketplace. Again, another plaza, room for tents, fairly close to where people and merchants can get to, and would be a good location to add a market. But I have another one here. I like to refer to these as secondary markets. They're almost like your farmers markets in the modern environment. This one is smaller. I see it as not necessarily the main location where everyone comes and goes to get their goods, but it's so close to the warehouses and the main shipping yard over here. I felt it would be natural for the merchants who have literally just brought their goods in, perhaps to have a staging location here. You know, they might have some warehousing, but right here they might be able to start doing their bartering amongst each other. So I see this as one of those locations where there's a little story emerging. It's less foot traffic from the city and more traffic between the merchants themselves. So I think that's okay to do that. Have these little tiny markets, even if it's just a few tents off to one side. Now, with that said, let's talk about how we would apply this to our main map that we've been working on, and how I would now draw these buildings. And I'm actually going to keep this map up here to one side, almost like picture in picture, while we do this, so you can actually see what the colored version would look like. Now, first and foremost, for the city we've been working on, I kind of earmarked originally this area here as being kind of my area where I was going to do my marketplace. I think I've changed my mind. And the reason being is now we've started to draw in some of the roads, even temporarily. I like this area. I like the fact that it is creating this cusp, like right here, between these main roads. Like the road comes in, and then it divides. And I love the idea of there being a sprawling marketplace right there. It's still quite close to the harbour. Easy to get to. It's pretty much in the heart of town. Easy for people to get to. And would actually create a wonderful visual as you're coming in. Maybe we'll even put a statue or something like that there as a focal point as well. So I'm actually going to relocate it. I'm going to do it right about here. And we don't need to draw in the roads yet or the buildings themselves around it to actually show how this is going to work. So when it comes to drawing tents, there are approximately 5 easy styles that will capture everything that you want, and then some details that will just give it the pièce de la résistance that will just push your maps over the edge, I promise you. So first and foremost, to these tents from above, right? And what does that mean? What does a tent look like from above? Well, at the basic level, something like that, right? And you can actually see an example of this if you follow the yellow cursor on the right. That white tent there is such an example. This striped one over here is such an example. Likewise, this green one. You can actually see them. This white one up here is such an example. So this is a great, easy start. But let's draw in another one. Otherwise, that's quite a small market. Here we go. Another style is simply something like this. Just a square. Imagine it like it's got supporting structures underneath the tarpaulin or the canvas, but it hasn't got the ropes going off to one side. Maybe it doesn't have the peaked roof. Maybe it's a slightly sloping roof out on the top, and that's it. How can you make that more interesting? Easy. Add a stripe. Now you could see examples of this here. This pink or purple one in the center here. This one, this blue one. I didn't actually color the stripe in the center, but this blue one right here. Even this one right here. That's got a little cross in the center, but you get the idea. this white one here. These are all just these basic shapes. Now, the next one to do, a little bit more complex. I don't overdo it, but it's always a nice one to throw in. It's something like that. Now, and you can see this purple one over in the corner here. Also this Umbrella Academy style one right here. Umbrella Academy? No. Anyway. If you know what I'm trying to get to, the zombies, that one. Let me know in the chat. Tell me I'm a dope. And then tell me what I'm trying to remember. Anyway. These... It's just this. And it's I want to call it almost like a star shape, but it's kind of not. It's just a 5-sided shape. What's that? Pentagram. And I kind of just loosely, you know, give it a little bit of a doop-y-doop-y-doop-y-doop-y-doop. It doesn't have to be perfect. Give it a little bit of the ridges, so to speak. I can imagine the ropes and the supports underneath creating those lines there. And that's it. Then the only... you can start, like, throwing in some variations on there. So we would do something like this, maybe, and just a single line. No ropes. Maybe we'll go off to one side. We'll do your standard box-shaped stall, but we'll give it a little bit of an awning at the front. And if we're going to do that, maybe... even give the awning a stripe. Now, this one... getting a little bit pixelated because we're zooming way in now. This one right here has an awning at the front. This is a prime example right here of what I'm talking about. Just throwing in these different patterns and shapes. But one thing I want to pull your attention to is the method by which I then draw these. And I've been doing this without telling you. I want you to think about creating little islands of tents like this. And by doing so, you are going to create these natural walkways where people are coming and going. But not only that, you actually are creating little areas where the merchants themselves maybe gather after a hard day of working. Or perhaps they've got a little fireplace with some benches. And what would we be if we didn't have a little cart that have been moving goods around? Maybe I'll do another one of those over here. And maybe the insinuation of some crates piled up behind the tents where they've got their goods for the following day. And you can actually see on the right, the coloured version, I've actually got these little dots, I've got these little campfires, I've got these wagons, and it adds so much colour. You can actually see I've got this little island here, I've got this little island here, and like, you get that idea that this is where people are coming, this is where they're coming in and out, this is where it's almost like merchants only, right? Staff only, right here. So that's how I do it, and so let's do a couple of others. I also try to vary these up a little bit. I don't have too many of the same type of pattern next to each other. Little variety goes a long way. So we'll do something like this. By the way, it's okay also just to do a little tiny box, like so. We take that slightly larger, maybe just a square tent, like this. Do this, we'll give a little stripe on the top. Again, I think we'll do a little sort of whoop-de-doo. Let's do another stripe, but no front awning this time. Something like so. You don't have to do a fire, obviously, in the middle of every single one. And honestly, depending on what scale you're drawing at, you may not even see it, but it becomes texture, and the eye does see the texturing. It goes, like, even, like, this map is probably going to be printed, let's say something like that. You can't see that it's crates. You can't see that it's a fireplace. You can't see that we drew in cards. But you can see there's furniture there. Furniture in inverted commas. There are things going on in there. And it differentiates it then from, let's say, the flagstone that we're going to have on the outside edge. And that's what you're shooting for, is this type of look here. Now, I'll finish that little marketplace off camera. By the way, this is probably a little too round. I wouldn't normally draw it literally so much like donuts, but this will work nicely. We might actually do the other one more like this, and we'll call it there. Now, next to this though, and next to our road, if we wanted to now show more of a permanent shop, how do we do that? How do we actually show that it is a shop and not just a regular building? Well, it's a little tricky, but there's a little saying I have, and that is, it's okay to exaggerate details in order to get the purpose of a building across. Like, really be on the nose with it. So, for example, if we draw a building like this, zoom out. It's a generic building. It's a generic shape, right? But what about if we change this up a little bit? What about if I actually inverted it? In fact, let's just make sure we're drawing a little straighter here. Inverted it. Bring the back of the building away from the road. And then gave this an awning, and with some stripes. Awnings with stripes, by the way, are gorgeous. Look at these. You've got a huddle of buildings around a central fountain or pool. And because of the awnings, it doesn't have to mean shop, but it takes on a more commercial feel, I think. So if you do something like that... And by the way, when you add this type of detail, but the roof is empty, it feels weird. So I typically would give some kind of roof detail here as well, like so. It just sort of balances it all out. You can see that we've got something similar going on the right there. Continue that a little bit more. Maybe I'm just going to keep back from the main road a little bit. We're going to keep the design fairly simple. Simple? Did I just say simple? We're going to keep the design simple. But now you'll notice that I'm away from the road here. Well, that's because we're going to do something like this. And again, let's give it a little bit of roof detail. Now, I think that they feel more like shops than a regular house. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't say that it's a house or some kind of apartment complex or something, but to me, they're beginning to scream shop. Likewise, if we put one on the other end, and this road is obviously very sort of loosely drawn, so I'm going to actually cinch in a little bit. I'm actually going to come in like so. I'm going to come in, almost replicating that shape a little bit right there. But I'm actually going to come down. To something like this. I'm going to put an awning here. And I'm actually going to do another awning right here. Just a single stripe on that one. Maybe the line there. Maybe this roof is a little bit more complex. Something like so. I think that these are beginning to feel like shops. So there we go. That is how I draw my commercial style buildings. The tent, non permanent structures and how I ensure that they are varied, adding a little bit of detail such as carts and crates and even where the merchants hang out together at night. How I then draw my more permanent shops. And ultimately, it's the awning. The awning goes a long way. Creating, by the way, a little bit of a courtyard at the front, I think also helps. Not required, but it kind of helps. You could see that this one up here has not got a courtyard in front of it. Nor is this one over here. But by grouping them together like this, I can almost picture people coming through here. You know, we've got a collection of shops that people go to and so on and so forth. And I think it has a nice feel. You can almost see those people walking down the street. So that's how I draw these buildings. Now, I do have a written guide version of this, which you can find on my Patreon. Patreon.com/AlysaFaden. You'll find a link down in the comments, in the chat, the description. And if you have found this useful, please consider hitting me up with a like. If you would like to see more in the series, hit subscription and maybe that little bell so you get alerted when I upload a new video. And if you have anything that you would like to see me draw, how do you draw hills? How do you draw graveyards? Whatever it is, hit me up with a question down below, and I promise you, I will get a video together just for that subject, because I'm sure that you will test me and I'll be able to come up with, well, this is how I would do it. Lastly, I am on my Patreon every single month, starting at the beginning of May 2021. I am releasing map components so you can start building your own cities. The buildings, these little tents, fully coloured, ready to go. You just got to start dropping them on your own pieces of paper, so to speak. So with that said, thank you everyone for hanging out with me tonight. Really, truly appreciate it. I will see you all on the flip side.